Well,
Hello.
Hi, Ed.
Hello, how are you?
hi, Ed.
I'm fine. And you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm vaguely starting to catch up on a few things now, which is good. So we'll give a few minutes for folks to turn up. Usually we start about 5 after. This is particularly true since we aren't even quite at time yet. Also, I know Frederick is not going to be able to be with us today. He reached out and let me know that he had a conflict, so he won't be along for today. Okay, we'll allow a couple more minutes for folks to turn up, then we'll get going. While we're waiting, is there anything that folks would like to discuss before we, formally kick off and move towards the project board?
Oh, yes, we have a couple of updates. Daniil, would you like to start with our updates?
Sure.
Daniil Ozlov. Yep. Or
go ahead.
Or me. Okay. Actually, I'd like to introduce a new engineer. It's Mikhail Avramenko. He was added as bench engineer a couple of weeks ago, and he already has something to report today. He will provide his status themselves, or we can help him. And also, second item to discuss, we prepared a document which show what we can fit into current release till the end of the June, and what we are not. And now or after the Scrum, we can go through this document and item by item and get the status.
Yep. Let's take that a little bit offline, because we have, this is sort of the open source community discussion. We can definitely have that as an offline discussion.
Okay.
Excellent. Awesome. So anything else, Denise, before we jump into the project board, or anyone else?
Oh, yes, we have also some few minor updates. Something like we have added ASAP label for major issues, and we already faced with a few major issues. So I think we can start with project board, and we can show these issues.
No, that's fantastic. I noticed that you added the ASAP label, which is very good. And there's also an open questions column, which was also fantastic. I went through and tried to answer some of those before this meeting. Cool. So shall we start with open questions then? We typically would end up working left to right because that way, if things, for example, move from to do to in progress, well, we don't review them a second time when we get to in progress. So on open questions, there's been a discussion on the NS, how to handle expiration of network services themselves. And the tricky part here is that for the most part, I expect network services themselves to usually be manually life-cycled, meaning that while we as a courtesy will create them if we don't have them for a network service endpoint, typically we expect people to be manually creating them because generally speaking, I expect people will be composing network services much of the time. And things like specifying payloads and that kind of stuff. So Vlad, I know there's been some commentary here, and I know Denise has had a chance to comment. Did this answer your question?
Yep.
Fantastic. Then we had naming conventions and commits discussion that Daniel had brought up. And I think you were mostly interested, Daniel, in being able to tie commits to issues, correct?
Yeah, looks like, yeah, so internally we agreed what it's looks fine for us. Also, as you can see, you also confirm it looks fine. So if everybody agree, we can just merge it already, I believe.
Do we have a commit related to the, do we have a commit related to PR templates?
Oh, no, not yet.
I guess Daniel meant another PR related to template for issues, and it is already merged. And also we can provide another PR with templates for PRs. So it is to do.
Okay, no, this sounds fantastic. And thank you for clarifying, because I recalled that we had hashed out in the community a PR for issues, but I think a PR for, template for issues. Well, I think a template for PRs is an excellent idea. I had not recalled seeing that go by. So continuous upgrade testing. This is the spec you put together for the release repo stuff.
Oh,
and I've done a once over look at this. I think it's probably a good idea to have a discussion in the broader community and see if other folks have ideas or thoughts as well. There's something about this that feels very good to me at the level of having a release repo. And so it's just a matter of sort of hashing through the specifics. Okay, NSC composition. So I commented a little bit on this morning. I suspect that there may be some confusion on this in the parent issue about composition, because, and I apologize, Vlad, I think it mostly comes down to me having been a little bit tardy in responding to some of your questions, and you having done the right thing and presume that we should sort of move forward.
Decomposition, yes, this one.
So, by the way, I really like this sort of checkmark approach to these things. That's been fantastic. But in this one, what I sort of commented at the end was, I don't understand why we need registry changes for this at all. I mean, I can understand how we might optimize some things by making the registry a little smarter. But we have code already to use the match fields from the network service to match an incoming request against a set of candidates outgoing, correct?
Yes, but it's about one point supporting multiple matches. So, for example, ZipNSE supporting both label step zip and label step zip and secure.
Oh, so you may be making this. You may be making this. So I have to be very careful because you often see things that I misflag. So, but I think you may be making this a bit more complicated. The thing is, it's always going to ever be about one hop. So if you come in, so your example here, if you come in, you'll get routed to zip. Zip will have something in its source labels that causes it to be routed to TLS. So zip has no notion of what comes after it. TLS has no notion of what comes after it. And we don't figure this out globally anyplace. It's an emergent property of the system. Does that make sense?
Yes, but we have matches in the network service description. So it is about these matches. So like zip is a source match and TLS is a destination match. It's not about something in endpoint, but it is something about a description of network service. So yeah,
yes.
Zip. So ZipNSE supports both step zip and step zip and secure as a destination label in this.
Oh, so again, part of it is how you choose to structure. Part of it is how you choose to structure labels. So having something that is, structuring your labels in such a way, if you want to be able to combine these things, you wouldn't do it as a label that is step equals something, because that is going to result in the situation you had here, where you have a multi-value label, and we don't have support for multiple values for a label. Neither does Kubernetes as far either, actually. A single label, HTTP will let you have multi-values for a header, for its parameters, but typically speaking, when you're dealing with labels, you usually don't. And so you would just,
Yes, so we just can use different labels. So it can be step 1 zip and step 2 zip and secure.
Or you could just say something like, zip equals true, zip and secure equals true. There are a lot of ways you could structure the labels for matching so that you don't need to have this kind of a list behavior that you're discussing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It was an interesting thought exercise, though, right? Because there will be times when people end up sort of combining these things together. That is absolutely going to happen over time. But I think it's a matter of, rather than making the system itself more complicated, you put that on the selection in terms of what labels you're going to use in your match. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yes. So I guess we need to make some another tasks. So the first task is invalid. This.
Yes. So my expectation would be this would probably mostly be a task about getting integration testing for something like this together. I mean, we may discover there's some reason, in the course of doing that, there may be something we have to fix. But my expectation would mostly be a matter of testing. Make sense?
No. I guess now we actually don't supporting some changing these labels in Discover, so it's still need to be implemented. And
so why would Discover be changing labels?
It's about when a client requests network service manager, and then endpoint requests network service manager, and both of them don't know about what is the next step, and it is only a manager who knows, and it should some kind of rotate labels in the connection.
No, but it's actually specifically, the idea is quite specifically that you basically, you don't want the individual steps to have to know about each other per se, right? So rather than saying, this is my list of steps, and so I'm going to, rather than having, for example, the ZipNSE specify the next step in its request, the ZipNSE would effectively just say, look, I provide the zip step, I provide the zip insecure step, and then when it's done whatever it's doing, when it makes its request to the next one of the chain, it basically can apply some label indicating what it's done, and then you put it together in the matches. Did you look at the sort of the example that was given? I think I pointed you back to an example from the old model repo on chaining these together.
Yes, there is an example in open repo, but in there we have two fields. We have client labels and endpoint labels for endpoint. But I think we can make just endpoint labels without client labels and make manager do this all stuff about thinking what will be the next labels.
The thing is, I think that winds up being, so it's a matter of which things you want to do. There's actually a great deal more flexibility in matching what comes into what goes out than trying to smush them together. And we definitely will want that flexibility for a variety of purposes. Right, because you have to know what are the labels on the request so you can understand how to treat that request, and what are the labels on the advertised by the NSE so you have an understanding of what that NSE, so you have basically semantic information coming from both ends that you can match together. Otherwise, you have to make the system quite a bit more centrally knowledgeable about the world, and you basically, centralization of knowledge limits scale and overly complexifies things. Does that make sense?
Not actually. I guess I'm thinking about NSM selecting the whole road for the request.
So the problem is literally we may not have access to all the information for all of that.
I guess that manager has the success because it can select network service from
the network service manager has enough information to chart out the next hop. It doesn't necessarily have enough access to enough information to globally construct the entire path.
So does it mean that we can have few network service registration and there is no whole path in each of them?
So let me give you an example, and it comes in with interdomain. So it may be in the case of interdomain that if I've got cluster A and cluster B, within cluster A, I may come in and I may do a lookup, say for a network service that's coming from some floating domain. And it may be that cluster B has been using a proxy registry. So it simply registers a proxy network service manager for the whole cluster for everybody, for every instance of the network service endpoint that it's providing. So literally, those network services aren't actually there. The information you actually need is living inside cluster B. It's been summarized and hidden from the broader registry. And so effectively, this ability to localize information and limit what gets centrally exposed makes the system much more flexible. So there is no global view of everything in NSM. Even with registries, you can have different registries for different domains. Does that make sense?
Yep, and so endpoint knows which labels it both provides and requests. Am I right?
Well, so a network service endpoint knows which labels it advertised itself with, presumably. And when a request comes into it, it knows which labels came with that request. But it doesn't necessarily know much beyond that.
Okay, but endpoint should make another request for the next endpoint. And what will be the labels for this request?
That will depend entirely on how the network service endpoint has been configured.
So endpoint knows about next step, yes?
The endpoint knows only the labels to put on its outgoing request. It knows nothing about the next step. And in fact, you don't want those labels to imply the next step. You want them to imply information about what you just completed. Because let me sort of give you an example. If I decide that I want to just go change the network service to insert another step in the chain, I don't want to have to go inform every network service endpoint in the chain about that. In fact, I may not control every network service endpoint in the chain. But if I go update the way that I match together the labels, I can insert new things into the chain without having to update the network service endpoints along the chain.
I guess we are talking about the same things, but with different names. Yes.
Entirely possible. All right, so let's take this offline. Cool. And Artem, I'm very sorry. I owe you a document on the WireGuard modifications in BGP beyond the IPv6 work, and I have not gotten to that yet. I apologize.
Okay.
Okay, so review in progress. Adding, so we've got something blocked here on adding package sandbox and Docker tests. It's blocked by, okay, it's blocked by a bug that needs to get fixed ASAP. Unify the expire servers. This is blocked by.
There is a PR in description.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, it needs a rebase. Oh, wait, so what is blocked?
It's blocked by what this PR 862. It did clock mock slowly runtime all the time. So, but this one.
Okay, so it's blocked on 862. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
WireGuard VPP IPv6 support. I've gone in and asked a bunch of folks to review that for you, Artem. So hopefully we'll get some feedback there shortly. Decompose scalability testing. This is, I think, under investigation currently.
I guess it's fully decomposed, so we just need maybe your approval for this. Please look in the top of this. There are subtasks with decomposition.
Okay, I will go take a look at that offline. Destructive chaos testing, I presume, also is waiting to be looked over to see if it matches the intent.
Yep.
Cross connect update infinite loop. I know this has been.
It is fixed for monorepo, and we actually cannot merge pair because of Azure clusters are not working with monorepo. But Artem already looking in this problem, and I guess it will be done soon.
Okay, and I seem to recall the root problem of this had been that the Azure credentials the monorepo was using had expired, and so we had to go update a bunch of those things, and there was some other issues that came up in the result of doing that. So VXLAN NGP port mapping, I will go try and see why that's not been reviewed. End-to-end DNS integration. I presume that this is in.
I guess yes.
Okay.
Also, I plan today to show a small demo with this on community meeting.
Fantastic. Okay. And likewise here, this is also closed, I presume.
Yep.
Okay. Cancel connect and connect server is invalid.
Actually, Daniel are working with this issue, and as I know, we have PR, and we need to review this.
Okay, cool. So it's just waiting for review. The remove package notify tools in single context. I know we've made some progress on this. Have we finished?
Yeah, we already finished. I removed from every CMD. I changed the function in every CMD repository and also removed the package from the SDK.
Fantastic. So this was a case where we had done something that we thought was very smart, and then in parallel, someone had made it part of standard Go. So that was good news. So in progress, interdomain support. How is this going?
Oh, it is going fine. Also, as we discussed locally, we need to do some modification of current interdomain implementation. So in short, our interdomain implementations that we have in SDK expect that only local proxy manager and proxy registry will do requests to remote site. And as we discussed, we plan to we want to include proxy registry and proxy manager from remote site into pass of requests. And I currently working with this in SDK.
Okay, excellent. Good news. And I presume, and that's related also to floating header domain. Common NSM scenarios are unstable in sandbox testing. Is this in the, yeah, this is an SDK.
Yeah, it's in progress. So I have found a few bugs, but it's still not working quite good.
Okay. And this is also related to forward or heel tests are unstable, I presume is in the same bucket of things. Okay. I see we have adding integration tests on AKS. Is there anything currently blocking you here, Artem?
AKS is in progress for monorepo and multi-repo. Now there is a strange behavior. Sometimes we cannot get network security groups information from cluster. I don't know why. And this is why tests are unstable. This problem also exists in monorepo, and now I'm trying to figure out what is happening.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Good to know. So we don't have the folks who are working on iPerf examples here right now. I'm getting relatively close in the multiple source test IP addresses. I've been working on that recently. The request for the liveliness probe. Basically, there's a patch to support this that's gone upstream in gRPC health probe. And there's a sort of an agreement in principle that this is mergeable. And so I just need to go poke again to get the code review to move forward. We've already talked about CI test in Azure, reworking Sandbox.
This is part of enable PKG Sandbox to be used in Docker tests.
Okay. And then do not fix stats if not changed. That's, I presume, currently blocked by the Azure stats.
Oh, yep. It's related to, it's blocked by Azure stuff.
Okay. Add resource requests for VPP applications. Oh, this was the.
I think it's done.
Yes,
okay.
it's merged.
Fantastic. We've talked about NSC composition, use IP payloads for all registering network services that have not set payload.
Oh, looks like it's done. Mikhail, do you remember?
Payload is ready.
It looks like it's merged. So is this issue closed?
I think so.
Got it. Excellent. Using the clock library to enhance testing. I remember seeing a lot of stuff go by about this, but I don't recall if it's all the way finished.
No, not all. So
Okay.
we still need to add clock in sandbox tests. And yes, this one.
Okay. So is this in review then, or?
It's partially under review, partially in progress.
Okay. All right. And then under to do, we've got this issue with test memi after VXLAN turning a little bit flaky in the CI that we found in the last couple of days. I think the add interdomain integration test, do we want to close this in favor of the, well, actually it's against the kind repo, so we should probably leave it.
Yep.
So I think we're right up against time. Shall we go jump on the community call? All right, see you all there.
Okay, see you.